blood has driven you in endless circles, chasing the cries of children in some unseen chamber, always seeming so near. Although for one of you, the darkest pit of hell has opened to swallow you whole. So don't keep the devil waiting, friend.
What you just heard was a bone-chilling message Henry sent out while the FNAF 6 location was burnt to the ground. This is where William Afton should have perished, but Scott had different plans in mind. I will be going over how Scott made the biggest mistakes by not retiring William Afton as the main antagonist and replacing that role to Vanny. But first, let's get into the basics. It's August 8th, 2014. A game developer named Scott Cawthon has created an indie horror game called Five Nights at Freddy's. His other attempts on making game titles really didn't go as his vision planned. Five Nights at Freddy's grew in popularity with faces such as Markiplier, Jacksepticeye, and other iconic faces playing the horror game for fun with no intent on the lore. But the popularity content creators had brought to the franchise, some speculated that there was more to the game that meets the eyes. I remember it being 2014 and watching Smike on the Five Nights at Freddy's lore. I wonder what happened to him. But anyways, just a couple of months later, Scott releases Five Nights at Freddy's 2 in November 11, 2014. Okay, let's just take a minute to appreciate how different and unique this game was back then. This game, in my opinion, is one of Scott's top tier games that he has released. Many new things and concepts were added, such as no doors, infinite power, not including the flashlights, and a Freddy mask. But it also brought a huge key feature to the lore, the minigames. We were introduced to the purple guy for the first time. I think it was Foxy's Go 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 minigame, if I'm not mistaken. But one of the minigames that really stood out to fans was the Take the Cake to the Children minigame. You're Freddy giving cake to the hungry kids, but you also notice that there's a kid crying outside and is locked out of the restaurant. A purple guy figure gets out the vehicle and stabs this crying child. Then you get jump scared by the marionette. Well, let me give you a better clearance on what this means. That crying child? Her name is Charlotte, Henry's daughter. If you don't know who Henry is, he was this genius mastermind that created animatronics but decided to work with this psychopathic maniac we see stab his own partner's daughter outside the restaurant. And when I say Henry was a genius, I mean he really was. Henry made the marionette puppet with such advanced AI that it had its own coloring coding system on who it should protect and stuff. Okay, let's fast forward into 2017 when Five Nights at Freddy's 6 came out. We're gonna get more into that later, but first I want to cover on when you buy the security puppet, you are granted this minigame where you play as the puppet. You're assigned a color code, which is green, and you're supposed to make sure that they don't exit the pizzeria or anything bad happens. If you grab the wrong child with the wrong color code, you get automatically kicked out of the game, but if you enter it back, you're brought with this cutscene. The marionette finally gets freed, but it's too late. The marionette goes outside into the rain. While doing that, it causes rust and debris. You crawl into the alleyway hoping to find the child, but all you find is the lifeless body. And without knowing what to do, you hug her, which fuses Charlotte into the marionette, which is why you're brought with this jump scare. But Five Nights at Freddy's 6 ain't come out 3 years later, so we didn't know that. So let's get back into FNAF 2. Seeing this minigame back in 2014 left unsolved mysteries on who the hell this purple guy really was. We just had to wait on the next release. Just 4 months later, Scott really released Five Nights at Freddy's 3. Man's a top G! Five Nights at Freddy's 3 came with a different concept. Instead of dealing with 5 to 10 animatronics, you deal with 1. This one is your main priority. So if you complete the game normally, you get this minigame where you're brought to a familiar location. Playing the nights in Five Nights at Freddy's 3, this probably looks familiar because you're brought to this same demise multiple times. But it's different this time. On night 5, you play as a crying child's soul. You follow the same path you followed and met your demise every single time. This time, there's no barrier, you can go through. Once you go through, you're met with this cutscene. This purple guy hops into a Spring Bonnie suit but instantly gets crushed by the spring lock mechanics, left to rot in the suit, while the souls disappear and fade. You also unlock the 6th night when you complete the 5th night. If you complete it, you're brought with this image stating Fazbear Frights has burned to the ground. But if you brighten the image, you can see a familiar face. Yep, he's still alive. After going through a spring lock failure and a fire, he's managed to stay alive.
I always come back.
So let's fast forward into the 6th installment of the game that came out in December 4th, 2017. This game in itself is a masterpiece if I do say so myself. Something that struck me the first time playing this was the salvage minigames. We saw a new face who goes by the name Molten Freddy, a raggedy version of Baby, and one more face that seems very familiar. Yep, it's William, but with a pretty poor design choice in my opinion. Like, look at that head this man's got. To be fair, the voice lines do sound pretty cool.
What a deceptive calling.
But I really do not like the style that they went with this. I understand that he's been through a lot, but just look at him without the suit on. This makes no sense. Okay, I'm done hating on the design. There's lots of different endings in Five Nights at Freddy's 6, including you can get sued. The ending I will be getting into is the true ending. Once you salvaged all of the animatronics and complete the game, you get this very iconic
Connection terminated. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Elizabeth. If you still even remember that name, this place will not be remembered, and the memory of everything that started this can finally begin to fade away. And to you monsters trapped in the corridors, be still and give up your spirits. They don't belong to you. For most of you, I believe there is peace, and perhaps more, waiting for you after the smoke clears. Although for one of you, the darkest pit of hell has opened to swallow you whole. So don't keep the devil waiting, friend.
This in itself could have just been the way Scott ended the series. All the spirits are freed, and William is finally be put to an end. But I understand, you gotta keep the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise alive. So on May 28, 2019, Steel Wool and Scott releases this virtual game involving all the tragic incidents put into a harmless VR horror game. All seems normal at first, till you start seeing this bunny glitched figure appearing behind you. He even talks, what the hell? There's also audio tapes hidden around the map. These tapes play an important role in the lore, explaining the reasons on the game being made.
They told us that the whole point of this VR game was to undo the bad PR done by a rogue indie game developer.
But something that caught me that wasn't in the tapes was this.
We went to great lengths to create an authentic VR experience, including using scanned photographs for reference and using original performance routines where applicable. Fazbear Virtual Experience is a robust title, but it almost never made it to market. The first development team had a lot of problems, made some sloppy mistakes, and was eventually pulled from the project. For that reason, we recommend that you avoid any comments, notes, or warnings that may have been left behind by previous development teams. We assure you that they are wholly untrustworthy.
So in theory, William was transported into this game by using old hardware and somehow becomes a virus? I know it makes no sense, but let's not get into that right now. As you listen to the tapes that have been secretly hidden around the game, it gets more and more eerie. You can obviously tell this person who left these tapes here are slowly getting brainwashed.
There is a way to kill it. It wants to escape through someone plugged into this game. That's, you know. You have to let it begin the process of leaving through you. Then use the disconnect switch that I've embedded by the main stage. Let it approach you. Let it begin to merge with you. Play the music and flip the switch. That will cause a hard restart of the game and flush the memory, effectively killing it. I hope.
I understand. Yes, I have it. I made it myself. I think you would like it.
In my opinion, how Help Wanted story went just wasn't the best. We were first introduced to Vanessa in the audio logs, but also in the Halloween DLC. If you play the Corn Maze minigame and you go down this bunker, we are introduced to Vanny's mask for the first time.
What?
Okay, let's go more into the future. On December 16, 2021, Steel Wool releases Security Breach. In my opinion, this is really how the new storyline should have taken place. We are introduced to this new villain, Vanny or Vanessa, whoever you want to call them. They take the new role as the villain while William is in the shadows controlling everything like an evil mastermind should. But we're stuck with this ending where William comes back to life for the billionth time. It's getting old and repetitive. But to be in the positive perspective, we were given a boss battle for the first time. But it's the lamest boss battle I've ever seen in my life. He literally just stands there while the other animatronics come after you. What? In my conclusion, Vanny should have took the responsibility and the new role as the main antagonist because of how her story come up was. It really made a lot of sense though. A beta tester slowly getting manipulated by this psychotic maniac serial killer. They could have just did so much more with her than just making her a sidekick. I really don't like how they did my boy Springtrap. But hey, I have no control in the storyline. If I did, I would have made it way better. That's all my ranting for this video. I know the video was short. I'm giving this a try. This is my first time making a story video. I hope I did right. If you have any opinions or anything I should add to the next video or anything I should fix, just let me know in the comments. But anyways, peace.